Pleasure to have Johnny here today, and we're going to be talking about what the Scots College does with regard to Indigenous boys, and because we have a research partnership with the Scots, so it'd be a good idea to talk about, let others know what we're doing. But we're also aware that a lot of people probably don't know exactly what the Scots do with regard to the Indigenous boys. So in the first half, Johnny's going to talk about that, and then I'll talk a little bit about my perceptions and interaction with the Scots, as well as the ARC grant project that we're working on. You would, in the original email, you would have got the, I sent around the, in our book in black and white, Johnny has a chapter, and two of the boys wrote a little essay about themselves. Did everyone get that? And I don't think, it doesn't matter how great a presentation we do, nothing could equal what you get from those short stories. Those stories tell the Scots story better than what we ever could. So it's a hard act to follow, but we're going to try and do it anyway. So Johnny, if you'd like to do the first half.
Hello everybody, nice to have so many people here to hear what I've got to say. I'm Dr Samengo, I run the Indigenous program at Scots. I've been doing that full-time for 6 years. My background, to be about the early years, my background was advertising. I haven't actually, never worked in school, never worked in the academic world before, and this is what happens. Hi Ron, how are you?
Hi,
good. This is what happens when you go along to your, to a fundraiser of your son's school, have too many beers, put your hand up and go, I'll help out. This sounds like a really good idea. And my wife turned to me and said, I have an idea. You've never helped out anybody. And you asked, why do you want to start now? And that fundraiser was a small fundraiser for the fledgling Indigenous program the school had. At the time they had 4 boys at the school, and it was just really kicking off, and it was kind of quite ad hoc at the time. And they had this fundraising dinner, which I went to, and was really inspired by Kyle Blakeney, who left in 2011. Actually, I had dinner with him last night. He's gone on to be the he went on to Sydney Uni, and he is the SRC, head of the SRC at Sydney Uni for last year, the first Indigenous male to do so. So he really inspired me by what he said at that dinner, and I went to Scots to set up a mentoring program for the, I think, 3 or 4 or 5 Indigenous boys that were there, and Kyle was the boy I mentored. So I got a whole bunch of other Scots dads to mentor those boys. And at the time, we didn't really have any fundraising, we didn't really have any structure. We just kind of chucked in a few Indigenous boys and thought, okay, well there they are, they're at Scots now, that should be fine, that should all be good. And one thing we've really learned over the years is you can't just put an Indigenous boy in a school like Scots and just hope that just by turning up to classes and stuff, everything's going to be great and they're going to pop out, an ambitious, potential lawyer at the other end. It just doesn't work like that. So we've done a lot of work in that time to try and make it a great program. And I was very impressed with the first meeting I had with our principal, Dr Ian Lambert, when he sat me down in front of his management team. He said, "This is Johnny." He said, "He's coming here to build the best Indigenous program in the country." And I went, "Am I? Really? Is that what I'm here to do?" I just wanted to sort of make it a little bit better. And that was an amazing thing to have his aim in everything that he does. Because I want to do it to be the best in the world, not even the best in the country. So that's very much the way he comes from. And it's wonderful to have a boss who has that kind of vision in the world about how great we need to be in the world and in the country. So actually that was an article in the Good Weekend magazine about Kyle and me after my first year there, and how he got me into the Indigenous program. And that was, I had a bit more hair back then, and I didn't have glasses, so that's what happens in a short period of time. So I'll just talk you through where we are now in reference to really where we've come from and my understanding and my learnings of how things have changed. And we're still not perfect. There's always more that can be done, but it has been an amazing journey over the past 6 years to try and make it into being excellent. And our aim is for the program to be excellent, and there's nothing standing in our way for it to be the best program it can possibly be. It's a great position for me to be in a world whereby there's nothing stopping you achieving excellence, which is really extraordinary. I've just got one slide for each of these points and I'll just talk to them. We've got 20 boys from all the way around Australia. When we started, what was happening is a couple of people had heard we had it. We had a couple of applications. Those applications, people were going, hey, you can come in. There you go. And we had 3 boys that just literally just kind of turned up because they applied and their mum said, look, we really like him to be here, and then he got there. So there wasn't any real strategy for what sort of boys we took, some of those early boys, a couple of them was through an organisation called Gallery, which is an amazing organisation that finds boys and provides some funding and allocates them to school and helps look after them. Some of the boys had just kind of turned up. Those boys didn't really have an expectation of why they were there or what they were supposed to contribute. And one of the best learnings for me, I was reading a Vanity Fair article just when I started, and it was an article about an American kind of private school that had a black kid that got a bursary to this school. And I was thinking, oh, this is going to be an amazing success story about how this kid got amazing education, changed his life. And in this article, he said that he felt like he was at somebody else's school wearing somebody else's uniform. And that was so incredibly meaningful to me. And I thought, oh my God, is that what these boys are potentially doing? And I thought about it, and it really was. And I still think this happens a lot with Indigenous programs at school, is that they have Indigenous boys have different expectations, and they go there as kind of like, okay, here you are, you're an Aboriginal boy in this school, which if you haven't noticed, has got lots of non-Aboriginal kids, so your job is just stay at school. If you can just possibly just stay here till year 12, and you would have done really, really well. Now, that isn't good enough, and it's still happening at a hell of a lot of schools around the country. Our aim is for boys to be the best they can be, to have really high expectations, and to have everything all the other boys have at the school. So if there's opportunities for overseas trips, then yes, they have those things too. I talk to them about being prefects, about being head of houses, and really succeeding at the highest levels and having the best possible jobs afterwards. So that's really how we look at the programme from now on. We start off with a few boys who are relatively close in New South Wales, because they're the people that have heard about the programme. I really wanted to move away from this idea, because in a way it's almost slightly elitist in itself, is the only people who apply for the programme is people who've heard about them, because they're the people whose parents might have kind of a connection or know a little bit about what happens in the world. So we weren't really getting to the people who really needed these opportunities. So what I've done over the past 6 years is to really try and broaden our reach, so we can go to some very underprivileged communities and areas, talk to them about what we have on offer, talk to principals of primary schools, so they can say, look, we've got some fantastic kids of their own volition have turned up every single morning to school, even though their parents don't even know they're coming to school. What happens to these kids when they go into senior school? And that is a real issue. So in talking to principals, then they've spread the word, and we're now getting, 5 years ago we were probably getting 2 or 3 applications a year. Now we're getting about 30 or 40. So that's really come through word of mouth, through me visiting communities, talking to principals, then talking to other people, and then all of a sudden families are able to go, I've heard of this, this sounds like a great opportunity I want for my family. So you know, one of the key criticisms is from people who really don't really understand what it is we do, is kind of, this is still a generation all over again, you know, you're just, you know, you're plucking people out and chucking them into school, and do they want to be there? And it must be incredibly hard for them. And we go, well, we're offering choice. You know, Aboriginal people's choice is severely limited, even if you live in upper rooms. We are trying just to give Indigenous kids a choice. Now, for most Indigenous kids, coming to a private school in Sydney is not the right thing to do. Most kids. But for some kids, it is life-changing and an incredible thing for them to do. That's their choice, that's their family's choice, and that's not my choice. So we now have boys from, we've now got half our boys actually from the Northern Territory. So we've got, this year we had 2 boys from Maningrida, which is a remote community about an hour from Darwin. We've got 2 boys from Alice Springs. We've got 4 boys from Gakawiak, which is a remote community in East Arnhem Land. We've got a boy from Munajuna at the foot of Uluru, and we've got some boys, other boys from New South Wales as well. So we've got a really great spread. And sorry?
Tell me, that's fascinating when you're saying that for some it's clearly not the right thing and for others, and now that you're getting lots of applications, how do you select the ones that come in?
It's a really good, it's both the best and the worst part of my job. I get a lot of applications, which I'll make no apologies for, are near white, near middle class people with two parents who live together and have two jobs. Now, I don't give them a place, straight up, because what I would say is I want this to be life-changing for the boy and the family, not a nice to have. A lot of our applications are a nice to have, so they don't get looking. What I'm looking for is three things. Genuine disadvantage, a family member, it could be a grandmother, grandfather, a mother, whoever it might be, a family member who really believes in education, and a boy who wants to make best use of every opportunity. They're the criteria we have. Not an academic criteria, not a sporting criteria, not a criteria that makes our lives easy. Another part of that criteria is that, another impact of that criteria, is that the Indigenous program is obviously there for the Indigenous boys. It's also very unapologetically there for all the other boys in Scots. We want, every year, when 200 boys graduate from Scots in year 12, we want all of those 200 boys to leave Scots kind of going, well, doesn't everybody have Aboriginal friends? Because I do. I've got a mate from Ireland land, and we want that to be the new normal, to be a really normal, everyday part of their life. So they say to their friends, what do you mean? You went to a school and why didn't you have those kids? How come you don't have the experience of what a remote kid's life is like? So therefore, those kids with greatest disadvantage are the ones that really provide the best education to those other boys. And that's another really important factor for that. As it happens, I find the boys with the most disadvantage for the religious communities are actually the easiest boys in the school. They are so incredibly lovely and so enthusiastic and make friends incredibly easily and are so friendly. A lot of them don't come with generational trauma that a lot of Aboriginal people from New South Wales do. They've had parents, they've had grandparents that haven't had an education, that have been turned down for jobs, that have been treated incredibly badly by their communities, stolen generation, a whole raft of issues. A lot of kids and families from remote communities, most of them see white people as being really quite nice people that teach them once in a while, popping them out of school, nothing wrong there. So they often turn up with this great view of white people are just weird people that endlessly talk. And I think that's really weird. And the rest of it's all fantastic. So you know, a lot of the criteria that other schools have of like, let's just make this a little bit easy, shall we? Let's just get some kids that are going to be easy.
Excuse me, we want to make it clear that one of the criteria is not the boys' sporting ability.
Yeah, I can say that. Yeah, and you know, and a lot of you know, and it was absolutely the case of us in the past. Some of the boys we had 7 or 8 years ago were the you know, the head of rugby kind of going, when the Lloyd McDermott team came along, it's kind of going, oh, we'll pick a few of the Aboriginal kids, put them into Scots, they don't have to do any work, and I'll be first 15 players. That is absolutely so far from our criteria. As it happens, an awful lot of Indigenous boys are incredibly good at footy and all sports that they do. But our sports guys have no idea about these kids until they come to school. It is just an irrelevance to us. Those criteria of a family member passionate about education, a boy who wants to make best use of every opportunity, and disadvantage is absolutely the key to it. So we've got a really broad footprint. Funny enough, next year, almost every applicant I've had has been from the Northern Territory. It's rather New South Wales ones. I don't know if it's because I've turned down a number of them, and therefore they're kind of going, you know what, forget Scots, they're not going to take us, you know, try some of the other schools. I don't quite know why that is, or whether our applications don't close till June the 1st, whether I'm just going to get a few of those later on. I've touched on this already, actually, the admissions criteria of the boys we take and why we take them. What we do also, very importantly, is we really believe that the education is not about the boy. It's not about just taking a boy away from his family, taking him to Scots, turning it back to the family, and then 6 years later going, there you are, he's back again. It is about an education for the whole family. We embrace the whole family. The reason why is, this boy is going to change considerably over this time. If the family don't change with him, then there's a real problem. Because what will happen is the family will go after a year, you know, he's different, he's speaking different language, he's talking about different things, and I don't get what he's doing, and I don't get what you're doing to him, so I'm going to pull him out, and I'm going to take him away. And that happens a lot at schools. So the first port of call in terms of getting, of seeing the right kids, is for me I meet every single boy that is potentially going to come to the school. So whether it means going to North East Island, Uluru, or the back of Burt, I'll go there and meet the families. And you get a great understanding of them, their lifestyle, you understand their level of poverty, their level of need, their work ethic, and a whole load of things that you could only see by actually going actually there to see their communities. And what's great is then you also get to visit families, other families from that community that you already know. So they become amazing visits because you get to know places really well. I can walk around Gappawiak and I know somebody in every street. So you walk along and you go, "Hi Johnny, yeah, Johnny." It's just amazing to be in that position. From those kids that I interview, you know, it's just me talking and then just nodding, and meeting some of the parents, we then get a short list of boys over to Scots for a 10-day, we call it a sample boarding stay, because people return, but it's just so they can see what boarding's like. And that will, in the early days that was 2 days, now it's 10 days. So we fly them over, we pay for that, they get a Scots tracksuit, take their mobile phones wherever they have them, they get a year 7 buddy, we chuck them into class, and they do everything everybody else does for 10 days. So that's a week. I really, normally it's in July or August, and I really hope that it rains and it's cold and there's nothing going on, because the more they see what you know, the boring side of boarding, the better. You know, I don't want to take them off the Bondi and show them how fabulous it is. I just want them to really see what boarding's like. As it happens, boarding is fantastic, but the point is that I'm not there. I'm there to, you know, to see whether they like us as much as whether we like them. At the end of that 10 days, 90% of boys will go, "Can I stay?" And they love it. So we're not in the business of taking boys that are going to wander around and go, "I hate this place, don't know why I'm here," and struggle year after year. You know, we take boys that we're pretty confident they love it already, and they're going to keep loving it. So as a result, we almost have no homesickness problem at all, which I've always found amazing. Every other new boy that turns up in the boarding house in year 7, they haven't had 10 days at Scots, they haven't had a whole weekend, they haven't been to classes, they don't know what the classrooms are. So the Indigenous boys that turn up tend to go, "No, I know the year 8s because they were year 7 when I came along last year, I know where everything is." So it gives them a great advantage. So you know, most of the time we've had, bizarrely, you can't notice homesickness. I just get parents ringing up going, "Why is my son not contacting me for 6 weeks? What's going on?" And I have to plague them to call their families. But again, because I've been to visit their families, they have a great sense of trust because I've been there and I've met them. If I hadn't been there, that would be a really different thing. Expectations, a really, really important thing, which I think I touched on earlier. It's very easy, and this is true of any kid at a school like Scots. If a kid wants to sit at the back of the class, not really do any work, not really ask any questions, and do the bare minimum, nobody's going to stop them doing that. That is just the way life is. You know, there isn't a one-on-one teacher-student ratio. Kids are there, and the ones that put in the effort will get stuff out, and the ones that don't put in the effort won't. But you know what? If they don't cause trouble, they sit at the back, nobody's really going to care. And what I really noticed is that, you know, I think half the things, one of the things that makes private schools work is pushy bloody parents that want value for money. So it's the pushy parents that often make it work. The Indigenous kids don't have pushy parents. Either the parents don't even speak English, or they're not on the phone, or they certainly feel enormously intimidated by or don't feel it's their place to kind of go, "Well, why is he at the bottom of the class, and why is this happening, and how come this issue's happened 3 times?" So it is really important that we give them the support network, so therefore we expect them to do well in class, we expect them to sit at the front, and we want them to be fully involved. And I'll get on to the mental families they have that really help them do that. But I have a pizza morning with them, pizza evening with them once a term, and we have the effort grades that get issued to all the kids. And I rather politically incorrectly rank the effort grades for everybody in the year from the top to the bottom, because of course nobody ever talks about how you rank anybody else anymore at school. And I draw a line in the middle, about, with 100 boys above, 100 boys below, and I highlight where the Indigenous boys are, and I go, hands up anybody, any of you that don't think effort-wise you should be in the top half of your year group. Not one boy ever puts their hand up. And you go, okay then, well we've got about half and half. Half of you are above the line, half of you below the line. So, and then we talk about why they are below the line. So they have a really clear understanding of what they want to do. I really believe that lowered expectations is one of the most passively racist things that white people can do for Aboriginal people. Is kind of expect less, and our view is that we expect a lot and we give a lot of support to enable them to really be their best. A lot of kids have missed years at school. A lot of kids have spent a lot of time at home with the right support and the belief they can do really well. We really believe great things can happen. One of our families, the Lewis family, an amazing family, very supportive of the Indigenous program, and this we did in honour of them, the Lewis Foundation Award for Indigenous Excellence. And this is an honour board that sits next to the Ducks of the college, the honour cap of the college, and the head boy board. So these are boards which have been up at Scots for over 100 years. And alongside that, we have this board which went up last year. And we've so far awarded it, retrospectively, it was for 3 of them, this has been awarded 4 times to 4 boys. So therefore, boys understand that excellence is really what they're there for. Support. This is me and Sheldon in Mangarita a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, I think the only top he bought with him was the Scots top. I think he bought it on holiday. He's an incredibly lovely kid. Support-wise, Nicole Coates works for me. She was a teacher from Capoeira. She works full-time with the boys. She's there all the time. She only works with 20 boys in academic support. All the boys have a mentor family, which I'll come on to, but there is a lot of support to make sure they are able to achieve the high expectations that we give them. Why they're here, I've covered this off already, the point about why they're here, a lot of why they're here is for the benefit of the other boys at Scots. So therefore they mix, which their parents never did. Most of their parents have said to me, I've never met an Aboriginal person before I was at Scots. So not only are we there for these boys to get a great education, and part, this great education is not that much about the classroom. I would say that what I'm after is boys who are going to make great 30-year-olds. So they're going to make great partners, they're going to make great dads, they're going to make great employers, they're going to make great employees. So what we're after is giving kids the pride, the stability and the confidence to really be great people in this world. And so much of that comes from outside the classroom and from their mentor families. So that's a key reason why they are here. Having said that, 14 boys have left the programme, 13 of them have gone into further education. That's Sheldon again, jumping off a boat into the harbour a couple of weeks ago. So that's a demonstration of one happy boy in term 1 of his experience at Scots. There are 2 key families involved with the boys. Do tell me to shut up, I'm running out of time. There are 2 key families associated with the school. One is a sponsor family. Every boy has a sponsor family that pay $30,000 a year, committed for 6 years. When I first thought I'll try and get the first sponsor, and I did, I've been amazed that for 6 years I've found 3 or 4 of those every year to sponsor the boys. The rest of that, the fees are $60,000 a year, comes from ABSTUDY, AIF or Yallourn. But that is the support the Scots parent body have for the programme. The other family is a mentor family. The sponsor family can be anyone. The mentor family have to be a family that don't have a son in the same year. And these mentor families really take on these boys as like another kid in their family. They have them for weekends, they come to parent-teacher meetings. Some of them have taken them on holiday with them, and these mentor families build great relationships with boys' families. Boys' families often come and stay with them when they come over. And it is an incredible thing to see. You see this ridiculous diversity come together. You know, one of these boys' families lives in this ridiculous house on the water in Point Piper, and it looks like they have somebody that puffs up the cushions in the morning. And they mentor Dion from Wulajulu. Dion's parents have been to stay with them. They are so close as a unit together, and it's been amazing. It really does. There is often people ask, you know, how do the kids cope with, you know, this kind of, you know, elitist education in the middle of Bellevue Hill? And the answer is, it appears to be invisible. It's never been a problem. Never been a problem at all.
So these are certainly no problems on the yacht the other week.
Yes, yeah. And yes, and you know, we all go out on a fantastic boat. And you know, it really is something that has never really been an issue at all.
Johnny, do you just want to quickly explain why a mentor family can't have a son in the same year?
Yeah, so the reason why a mentor family don't have a son in the same year is so they don't have to be friends. They're in the same year group, there's a feeling, well, we better be in the same groups of friends. It also means that they can't do both parent-teacher meetings. It means when they go to Glengarry, our country campus in year 9, there's a conflict of interest there. So if they're a couple of years apart, it means that, you know, the younger ones always look up to the older ones. You know, sometimes the younger of the Indigenous kids, sometimes the younger of the son. And as time goes on, it started off being a program for male mentors, for dads, and now it's become a family thing. And now when I go and interview the mentor families, the prospective mentor families that volunteer, I talk to all the family, I talk to all the kids, I talk to the mum and the dad, and they need to be together across it, you know. And some of the kids are just so unbelievably, you know, into this kid that they take on in their lives. It's absolutely amazing, and vice versa. We have a fundraising dinner every other year. That's the marquee with the harbour behind, which you can't see too well. I've actually never organised an event in my life, and but kind of really enjoyed putting it together. And we've done 3 Indigenous dinners so far, and the last dinner we had raised $1 million. Which was quite extraordinary. We picked up 4 sponsorships and about nearly $300,000 on 100% donated auction items. Just a warning for you all, a lot of charity fundraising dinners have companies that provide the auction items that make a profit off everything sold. Most of them do. So therefore, if you pay $2,000 for something or other, $1,000 could be going to the company, only $1,000 is going to the organisation. All of our prizes are all 100% donated. We had a brand new car donated, we've had amazing Aboriginal art, we've had holidays to New Zealand, we've had incredible stuff donated. We had the 4 Burgess boys donated as a prize last year as well. So all the Indigenous boys come to that. I ask all the families to. This dinner, the tickets are nearly $300 a head, and the dinner sells out in a day. So that's the support the school, through the prep school and senior school, that's the love they have for supporting Indigenous education, which is really extraordinary and really demonstrates how well respected and how well loved these 20 Indigenous boys are, that all these parents so much want to support it. You know, I get older parents saying to me, you know, we live in this ridiculous bubble of the eastern suburbs, and isn't it great that our kids can experience these fantastic Indigenous kids that don't have all the material stuff that we have, but we've got to have a great sense of ingrained happiness with so little, and bring so much to our family and to our son. So the next dinner is next year. So for those social media wise people, we have the Facebook side I use a lot. So I posted something on it yesterday, 2 things yesterday. And also our website has got some videos and a lot more information. Another one of the things we do, I didn't mention here, is we actually take a trip. There's a whole load of parents saying to me, you know, can we go out and visit the remote communities? Can we find out some more about the boys? So another thing I do, which is I'm just organising the 3rd one for October, we have a trip to remote communities, which I take 20 boys and parents on. It's normally a partnership of a son and a parent. And we go off and visit those communities. So that's another spin-off that's come through the interest of parents going, you know, either often mentor and sponsor parents going, you know, we'd love to go meet the families of these kids we help out. So it really has been a program which is so much more than just 20 boys there, but has created a whole sense of warmth and belonging and optimism. And how great, and how often when Indigenous issues are discussed, they're discussed in a framework of joy, optimism, and great expectation for the future. And I think that's what makes it such a joy for me to work at.
Thanks, John. This is going to be boring part of it. This is my bit now. But nonetheless, I'll try and.
And do we have time for questions afterwards?
Yeah, we sure do, and I'll go through this quickly. Now, with my presentation, John and I didn't chat about what we're doing, and I just want to be a more interesting dynamic rather than us deciding, whatever. We just come at it from two different perspectives. So there'll be a little bit of overlap, but hopefully I'll bring another perspective to it. Now also, when John was describing the commitment from the families, he did a good job, but you cannot fully appreciate that until you've been to one of the Scots functions, and I've been to a few of them now. You walk into the room and here's all these people, all these families who just embrace Aboriginal issues, and you have to witness that firsthand to fully appreciate it. Yeah. So there's some photos of Dame Murray Bashir, John and I at the last dinner in that huge marquee, and the boys on the yacht. You want to quickly tell them about the yacht?
Oh, one of the parents, the Lewis family who are on board is, they sponsored two boys at the school, and the first time, like 3 months after I'd met her as a mother, she rang me up and she said, "Oh, you don't know me, but my name's Marnie Lewis, and would the boys like to come on a sausage sizzle on my boat?" And I said, "Oh, I'd love it." I said, "That'd be great." And I said, "We've got 6 boys, if I brought the mentors, that's 12 people." And I said, "Well, how many people can your boat fit?" She went, "Well, we've never had more than 200 on it." And it's a 3-story boat with a lift on it. So it's one of the biggest boats on the harbour. So every year the boys sort of, leap off story 3 into the water and have a great time.
Yeah, so I was there a month ago, and I'd never seen anything like it before in my life. I was just, wow. And as we were both saying, well, the boys, they weren't intimidated, they just had fun. So it was, the exciting thing having this association with the Scots, we have the same vision, the same passion, the same commitment. Okay. So background, it's become increasingly recognised that the Scots are doing great things, and you heard that today. So Johnny and the boys contributed a chapter to our book a few years ago, which some of you had the opportunity to read the boys' stories. And Johnny wanted an evaluation done of the program, and so it was identified that rigorous research was needed to capture and document what the Scots do, so that could be replicated. So that's how the research come about, and ARC don't do evaluations, it's more complicated than that, so I'll talk about that shortly. So given the complexity of doing robust evaluations, and ARC grants seem to be the way to go, and what we want is, it's very easy to do a cheap walk into the school, ask a few questions and then produce an evaluation. That can be knocked over very, very easily. We will be comparing with other schools so that the evaluation we give will be a very solid, robust evaluation of the school. Now, it's all about unleashing potential. A couple of years ago I went to a remote community in Australia, and you see those Indigenous children there. They're happy, which is great. That's their accommodation in the background. That's where they live. Okay. And you look at the water there. When I first saw that, I thought, my first thoughts was, the kids, they can't be swimming in that. Think of all the bacteria, all the germs. And then I thought, well, actually, I walked in their camp. What they get in the dry earth couldn't be any worse than what they get in the water. There's a lot of bad stuff there. So this is what happens when children do not get the choice to go to a school. They end up staying in communities like this, and for obvious reasons I wasn't going to photograph the adults, but it's not too hard to see in 5, 10, 15 years what the adults in those communities are doing. They're basically sitting down, not doing anything, living in appalling conditions. So it's places like the Scots who are just simply giving a choice. They're not forcing anyone, they're just giving a choice. And at any time those boys decide to pull out, what happens, John?
Well, it doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, but they are free to.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, we've only had 2 boys in 7 years, not the whole thing.
So look, in that picture, yeah, they're kids, you see happy faces, but there's a lot of sorrow, especially when you see the adults. Just a snapshot of the research program, so $307,000. And the overarching research question is, what enables the Scots to make a real difference in the lives of young Indigenous boys? Okay? And as I said, we want a rigorous evaluation. And also an offshoot is, Johnny's not going to be doing this job forever. He carries a lot of knowledge in his head. He wants to leave something so that it can be continued. I think probably be no better feeling for you than once after you've left, it's continuing on. So what the need for it? Okay, Indigenous, we all know this, okay, so I'm not going to bore you with the stats. For some locations, even if there is a desire for education, options are very limited. And Rhonda, Janet and I went to some communities a few weeks ago where we saw a lot of potential there, and those kids, a lot of them aren't going to go anywhere simply because in their communities there's just not that much to do. So programs like the Scots are giving choice for these kids. As Johnny's already said, it's a two-way process. So the white middle class family, whatever you want to call them here, they benefit just as much as the Indigenous boys. So therefore it's a win-win situation for the boys and the Scots College community. So what are some of the differences? And I've spoken to a few different people in boarding programs, and I've been so impressed with the Scots. And as I said earlier, you cannot appreciate how good a job the Scots do and how sincere they are until you've been to a function yourself, a dinner, and you just see what happens there. Okay, so Johnny's already spoken about these criteria, so it's got to be boys that have a genuine need. They're from a disadvantaged background. Education valued by at least one family member. The Scots community are extremely passionate about Indigenous education. Okay. The boys are held to high standards, so they're there to reach their full potential. A very important point, I've spoken to Johnny about this before, the boys are seen as Scots boys first, Indigenous second. So they're not seen as this special group that have got to be put away and make all these special allowances for. They come in and they're Scots boys, and they lead as Scots boys as well. And Johnny's already explained this, but I hope you like the analogy there, John. Okay. You've heard it. I think the most important thing is, as these boys are changing, the family have got to change as well, or otherwise, when an organ transplant goes wrong, there's a rejection. We don't want a rejection when these boys go back with their families. Yeah. The program has excellent leadership headed by Johnny Samengo, Dr Lambert, and the college executive. Is that fair enough to say?
You can take the college executive off, just 2 of us, really.
Right. I guess it's just, the leadership there, and has overwhelming support from the whole school.
I think you fired the college executive, I think you got fired the other day.
Oh, okay. Right.
You really have.
Okay, so anyone who's done research with schools will know the logistic nightmares, and this is going to have all those nightmares, but we've got through it before, we always do. I think the most important thing is, Einstein's, I think it's better than his theory of relativity. Okay, there's a lot of good stuff happening here in that school. It's very hard to capture in a questionnaire, whether it be a quantitative or even a qualitative. So we're coming at it from both perspectives, quantitative and qualitative. But again, I keep saying you cannot appreciate what happens there until you go to one of these functions, until you see the boys, and you have a presentation like this. And this sort of thing is hard to capture in normal research methods, but we will do it. Okay. We know that the boys are going to do well, so if they come from a community, they're going to do well in any school in the city, generally speaking. So we want to find out what's the Scots difference. So Scots are doing above and beyond just being in a city. And that's what we want to pull out in this research. There's many players in this, so the boys, the families, the communities, school staff, mentoring the families. So it's not just about the boys, but there's a whole lot of variables which we have to measure with precision and draw out the important findings. The goals and perceived value of education from the family's perspective may be somewhat different from those of the research. So we'll be working very, very closely with a whole range of stakeholders, working very closely with John to make sure that this research does really capture the essence of the Scots College. So on this project, you know, it really does go above and beyond in a lot of ways to any other research we've done before with schools. We originally just wanted an evaluation, and the Scots will get that, but the ARC don't fund for evaluation, so we've had to tweak things a little bit to make it so that it meets the ARC standards, but so that an evaluation will come out of this as well. The research design, just very quickly, so that's qual and pod. We're going to have schools that have similar Indigenous education programs for the Scots. Rural schools, so we want to compare what would happen if, say, the boys didn't come to the Scots, so what would have been their trajectory. So for study one, a sample of students and other stakeholders will participate in interviews with additional in-depth interviews and focus groups with people from the Scots College. Study two, all the students to complete a quantitative survey across 3 time points. And again, this is a bit of a nightmare because we want to compare apples with apples. Each school does things differently, so we've got to choose the language, the survey items and that very, very carefully so that it allows us to make comparisons and that it's meaningful. That's difficult, but we're doing it. The timeline, year one, so ethics measures, all the humdrum stuff. Year two, analyse the qual data, refine the quant instrument, commence study two. And we've invested so much in this already, so we've made good progress. Year three, so we've got 3 points, 3 waves of data, and we'll be conducting the analyses, submit publications, etc., etc. Rhonda, did you want to add anything to? I've gone through that very quickly simply because it is the dry bit. I wanted Johnny to be the star of this, and without even trying, he was when he's talking about the boys. And actually, I did ask Johnny if he could bring a boy today, and no, he couldn't because they do take it seriously. The boys are there in school. Had he have had there been spare time, a boy would have come, but they are there for school, not to be here as a show pay. But yeah, Rhonda, you want to add anything?
We're also going to put a PhD student on this ARC grant, and the PhD student is actually coming from the Scots College. It's a teacher associated with Scots, is it?
Toby?
Toby, yes.
But you don't know? You don't know Toby?
Do you know Toby, Johnny? Apparently he's a teacher at the Scots College, so we're also going to build some capacity with that. But look, the reason that we're so excited about this is because, as you can get from Johnny, what is happening at the Scots College is they are transforming lives and communities. And it's not just the Indigenous boys' lives that are being transformed. They are going on to university, becoming lawyers, doctors, all sorts of things. They are triumphing. It's not just that. They are changing the way that the Scots community understands Indigenous Australia and interacts with Indigenous Australians, not just boys, their families, their communities. What is going on at the Scots College is a triumph. And what we want to do is try and capture what those ingredients are that are creating this amazing culture and climate that is doing the things that we want to achieve for Indigenous Australia more broadly, in the hope that others can replicate these key ingredients as well. It is not an easy piece of research. It is very difficult. There are lots of complexities to it with the various groups involved. It is not going to be an easy path, but I'm expecting that what we are going to capture is the drivers that create this joy, this joyful environment, this triumphing in Indigenous Australia. So we're really excited about having the opportunity to work with the Scots College. It also feeds in very nicely to our Centre of Excellence application as well, and it also leverages very nicely, you know, when I'm out talking to people, I'm always honoured to be able to say, look, we're working with the Scots College and their program is absolutely phenomenal. These are some of the elements of their program. These are things maybe your schools could start thinking about trying. So it's really something that makes a difference, and it's something all of the people in IPPE who are associated with this research are really working hard on and are very proud to be involved with and contributing to it. And I also want to say thanks, Johnny, for coming in today. I really appreciate you talking to our colleagues here and sharing with them what you do and what you do so well, and the excitement of this project.
Yeah, to borrow from Mick Dodson to his quote, there's examples of success out there that we need to replicate. And I think, John, it's fair to say you would like what's happening at Scots to be replicated all over the country.
Yeah, well, I'm very happy to help other schools. You know, we've been doing it a little bit longer than others, so therefore there's lots of help we can give. So I don't want any other schools to have to learn things all over again if we've already learned them. So you know, that's a really helpful thing. We can kind of go, we've learned a lot. We can save you having to do trial and error and just hopefully learn what works. Yeah.
I also think, like with the research too, Johnny, I mean, that's going to get the word out more broadly as well, so that, you know, here's the data-driven evidence that shows that this works. This is something like, we have very close connections with Prime Minister and Cabinet, and, you know, like getting that communicated to them can help get the message out more broadly. Here is, you know, a pillar of thriving in Australia. You know, what can other schools do to replicate it? And I think that's exciting. I have a question that I'm dying to ask Johnny. Am I allowed to?
Yes, please do.
Good. Dr Anthony and I were up in Darwin and we visited some remote communities, and one of the communities was Wadare. For those of you around the table, Wadare is 1.5 hours outside of Darwin. It's a very remote community.
In a light aircraft.
Yeah, in a light.
I just got it said Wadare.
What?
So it's all right, go on.
Yeah, and we went out to the community. Now, this is a community where the school is the hub of the community, Johnny, and there's nothing else there. It's the school. I'm talking about parents who are not actively parenting, kids who wander around the community, because the parents are up the, it's a dry community, so the parents are up the road where there is another community where they can access alcohol, where they're playing cards, where the grandparents are the people that are doing the child rearing, and with a school with young people who are trying really, really hard, you know, really hard, and the principal is an absolute delight. And I said to the principal, you know, have you had any thoughts about some of the children here going to boarding schools? Because boarding schools are working for these kids. You know, they work for certain types of kids, but, and he said, yes, I think some of my kids would benefit from it. But I wanted to ask you, with remote communities where you've got that big situation going on, and I know you're familiar with it, if you've got a grandmother that supports a boy, would that be something like communities like that Scots have already got on board, and how well is the program working for those sorts of boys? Really well.
I was up in Mangrida and Mutitulu 2 weeks ago, and that's exactly the same type of communities as ones that you were saying. It works incredibly well. You know, the community, I mean, communities like send kids for a number of different reasons. Some of them just kind of, we just want them to get out of here. You know, we just want them away from some of the issues. Other parents kind of go, no, we really want them to be leaders in the community, and that's why we want them to go, so they can have a great education. There are lots of reasons. The boys are incredibly good at living two worlds, and one of the questions people always ask me is like, well, what happens when they go home, you know? And they do go for holidays, and they have an unbelievable ability to be able to go home, love their time at home. In some holidays they can get a bit bored, but love it, love their connection to community, love their connection to land, and love coming back. And they really do have the ability to live in both worlds, and seem to do it incredibly successfully if you get the right kids in the first place. So it is amazing how well it works. The thing, I will say something about the word boarding schools. This can cause huge problems as a terminology, especially in Northern Territory. Boarding schools is right to point to take an analogy about boats. You know, they're boats and they're boats. You know, same with boarding schools. You know, they're boarding schools in Darwin that are little better than prisons. You know, kids are locked in at night. There's rapes, pregnancies, drinking. They are abominable, and I think sometimes the government mistakes boarding schools for boarding schools. So some of those have been absolutely appalling. And then the other end of the spectrum, you've got a school like ours. So therefore, it's very important when talking to them and that's why we like to get parents over to Scots. They understand what type of school their kids are at, and that isn't like a boarding school in Darwin. And at the moment, the Northern Territory government is trying to push more and more kids into boarding school. And a lot of the schools they're sending them to are really bad. A lot of the kids don't want to go. A lot of the kids hate being there and never go back at the end of term. So in a way, that makes our job all the harder because it gives, you know, all these bad experiences of some of these schools in Darwin are put in the same basket as all boarding schools, which can be a real problem. So.
Well, there's also the history of the stolen generation.
Yeah, absolutely, and that can be a replica of that, a replication of that all over again, where the government kind of goes, you know, you can see it happening, which I think is absolutely appalling. And I hate to think that what we're doing contributes to this. Is a view towards government, and Tony Abbott was along these lines of kind of like, well, let's just close down schools and send everybody to boarding schools. That seems to work, you know, and it is appalling. It is not right. You can't take kids out of community, take them away from their families, and somehow expect them to I don't know what, miraculously learn stuff, and then what, you know. It's just it is a terrible thing to do. So I'm actually quite anti a lot of what the Northern Territory government's trying to do. So.
But your system works. I mean, I found your talk very moving. I don't know anything about Indigenous education, but the history of the stolen generations in residential schools that did a lot of damage to a lot of Aboriginal, not just here in Australia, but also in Canada and the US as well. So I find this is, I don't know if you see it, but this is a form of a beautiful restitution. Social justice of sorts.
Well, it is. I mean, the aim of it is to be positive and forward-looking. And interestingly, I think about this just driving here on the Facebook site, is that if I post something about historical difficulties or trauma or those kind of things, they get passed on in a really small way. You post a kids having success or enjoying themselves, and they go to thousands of people. So it is the sentiment is all about positivity and success is the thing that people really want to hear about and are really interested in.
Hi Johnny, congratulations. It looks like a really great program. Just wondering, considering the significant financial contributions you get to the program, how could you see that being replicated in, say, public schools that are so underfunded?
Oh look, it's a big problem, and you know we are extremely lucky being in a very high net worth area that you know we can tap into families with a great social conscience and the ability to do something about that social conscience. And it's tax deductible, so it makes it half the amount, but it's still an enormous amount of money. And you know, it is a real issue. It is a lot of money to put into one child. But then when you look at all the money that's put into welfare, you know, this would be another fascinating bit of research, is how much money can an education like a boy at Scots save in the tail end as these kids don't have 9 children by 4 different wives, don't lead to an entire generation that might be on welfare. So that cost stopping a bigger cost. But you're right in terms of replicating that. Obviously, a lot of other schools in the rest of the country are a lot less expensive. But there is a lot of government funding. You know, the ABStudy pay between $5,000 and $25,000 a year. That's means tested. AF and Yallery contribute a lot of money. So there are ways it can be done that doesn't involve private sponsorships. We need to do that because we're a lot more expensive. So most schools in Sydney. But it is tough, and it's one of those key points. And I've been to a couple of conferences that just send me into distraction, whereby there's still a view that somehow it's a government problem, and government has to solve it. And you go, look, government caused this damn problem in the first place. They're not going to be the ones solving it. You know, Aboriginal people and community organisations need to get over this idea that private enterprise and evil people are always after their own aims, because they're not. You know, sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. But you know, private money is what is going to help. It's not government strategy. It's not government money, because I think we all know from the past that doesn't really often do much and can do a lot of harm.
Thank you for the interesting presentation, and my question goes in the same direction as Barry's, I guess. You said something about the new normal, but I was wondering, aren't you taking kids from one extreme and putting them in a different extreme, which is not normal at all, because it's like...
Yeah, we are.
So I was wondering, you probably already have an idea of what the key indicators of making this whole thing successful are, and if these are related to the money that school has, and or if not, what are they that a public school could use?
Well, it is, I think, related a lot to boarding, and that makes it difficult for public schools, because the actual boarding environment, belonging in boarding, in fact, you look at the layout of a boarding school, it's kind of like an Aboriginal community. You've got people living around, and they all hang out in the middle on the oval, and they all kind of eat together, and you know, so there is a lot about boarding that works really well. I know a couple of schools have had more success with day kids, but I think that's almost because they haven't put in much effort. They've kind of gone, you know what, if we can get rid of them at night time, they're just here during the day, it'll all be easy. So it is much harder to replicate in the public system, because boarding is one of the key elements that makes it work. A lot of, I've seen programs whereby they house families, house Indigenous kids with local families. I've yet to see that really work anywhere, because they don't like living in a nuclear family of two boring white people who watch telly and eat terrible food. You know, they like the idea of community. So it is really hard. I don't know the answer of how that is replicated in a public system. The closest thing I've got to it is the Clontarf Foundation, and what they do, they provide sporting environment connected to schools. So they replicate what private schools do, and that is having sport as a key part of school. So therefore, if you're not working hard, you don't get to do sport. And if you do well in sport, then you're probably going to do well in class. And to bind the whole things together, so a lot of kids have a reason to go to school because they like the sport bit. And so that's a way that public schools can have success with Indigenous kids, is to wrap sport up in it and make that an integral part of the offering. So that's one example, but hard to do. Sorry.
It sounds like curriculum is not a key part of this. Is there curriculum changes that are associated with reflecting issues, Indigenous issues? Or,
yeah, it is obviously an important part of it, but it's kind of the obvious part. So it's kind of the bit that you're right, I haven't really spoken about at all. Now, our boys have to go to homework sport twice a week, whether they like it or not, and they understand. You know, in fact, you know what? For about, I don't think I've had a single boy in 3 years say, "How come I have to do it because I'm Aboriginal and the other ones don't?" Because when they've said in the past, it's going bad luck. That's part of why you're here, and that's part of what you agree to, and they're fine with that. So there is a lot of extra support. We actually this year we've taken a boy out of the HSC, because the HSC is such a sausage factory for university entrance, and if you're not going to university, then you don't need to be in that sausage factory. So especially since Indigenous entry for UTS and Sydney Uni for UTS is interview based, so therefore one boy currently in year 12, we've reduced him to 8 units, because if he puts more effort into 8 units rather than doing ancient history, which he hates and isn't doing very well, he can do 8 units, and it's not going to jeopardise him getting to a university like UTS. So that's a way that we've adapted the academic side to fit him. So we might be doing that more in the future for boys who don't need to be in that HSC 8R pathway. But I do think the most important bits they learn aren't the bits in the classroom. I always think 50% of what they get out of school is learned from their mentor families, learned about conflict resolution, about communication, about respect, and about timekeeping, and about a whole load of things that they learn that's going to make them great 30-year-olds. So there is look, I'm not a teacher, so I'm probably a bit biased in that view, whereby I don't know what goes on in bloody classroom anyway. So I'm probably leading you astray. It is a very important part, but it's certainly. That's already really good at a school like Scots, so I don't need to do anything with that, so that's why I do more.
Yeah, but I was thinking more of the sort of, I don't know, it's really tricky territory, isn't it? But I was thinking, it sounds, there's a little bit of colonialism about it. Bring the boys in and teach them.
We are teaching them white ways. We are teaching Aboriginal boys white ways. That is absolutely what we're doing. And we very purposefully, I think a lot of people say is, you've got to have an Aboriginal liaison officer and you've got to take them off to do cultural activities and all that stuff. And we kind of go, well, that's not what our boys are here for. Our boys are here because they choose to get a great Anglo-Saxon education so they can know what goes on in our fundamentally Anglo-Saxon world. And that is the reason why they're here. Not right for everybody, not everybody's choice, but that is why the point that Anthony made is that they're Scots boys first and Indigenous boys second, because that is what them and their families want to do. And it is utterly colonial. The whole school system is utterly colonial. And yes, they very much sit in that regime, without a doubt.
And if you look at the leading Indigenous voices in the country, most of them have benefited from that, whatever you want to call it, colonial education or whatever. And I think Ben White and both Alison Anderson, two Indigenous leaders, have said, our kids, Indigenous kids, need to westernise, and that doesn't lessen their Indigenous identity. Yeah. So, maybe last question from her.
Yeah.
So I hope people can stop and chat with Tony.
You've talked about some of the Indigenous boarding schools in Northern Territory. Wouldn't it be fascinating if Scots took on a project to transform one of those boarding schools and create some of your magic there?
Yeah.
It may not be possible, but it would be a fascinating, even if it's a high risk undertaking. That would be really fascinating.
I'll write the grant for that.
Look, I don't know if anybody's read about this whole thing that's happened with Scots with the council being fired and all that kind of stuff. But part of that was kind of, Dr. Lambert, our principal, is a big picture, big idea guy, and he throws around big ideas and people kind of go, oh my God, are you mad? But, I know the one things he talks about, it's not that he would probably ever do it, it's kind of going, why don't we have why isn't there a Scots in Maningrida? Why isn't there a Scots in Beijing? Why isn't there a Scots next to, St Andrews University in Scotland? Why don't we take this thing to the world? And that is, a big picture idea. A lot of English schools are doing it too. And then the council will kind of go, no, we were a Presbyterian school in New South Wales for the benefit of kids in New South Wales. And you go, that was in 1880. Is that what we're still doing? So there is a lot of that big debate. Is, could we do that? Absolutely. It's all about resourcing as well. But that is an interesting point about how far do we take this Indigenous education thing? Can we create a halfway house whereby we could create something that educates kids in year 6 and 7 to put them into year 8 in a variety of different schools? There's so many things that could be done, and again, things that are private enterprise ideas. When I say private enterprise, I'm including the church, which is the basis of a lot of schools in this. Could you take private enterprise ideas with government backing? That seems to be the new way government seems to be going, because you get much better results. Is that a way you can do it? Then you can get funding, government funding, get LAF funding, and a whole range of things. But absolutely.
Well, our COE is going to transform whole communities. And certainly the school is a critical part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many big ideas that could happen.
Okay, before we thank Johnny, just two things quickly so you can stay and ask him questions. With the functions, the evenings, the dinners you have, please give us advance notice on that, John, because as you said, the tickets sell quickly, and we'd like a few of us to go. And the second point I forgot, but it'll
Take it to the 10.
Yeah,
Come on, table.
Yeah, it'd be great to have Iffy.
I'm not giving you two.
Will it be paid? Will it be paid for that? I don't know. But like I said, I've been to them before, and they are fantastic. That's right. The following, if you didn't read the essays written by the boys, dig it up in the email, or I'll send me an email and I'll send it to you. But you read those, and it tells you everything far better than what Johnny and I have done today. When you hear it from them themselves, there's nothing that can match that. You'd agree with that, John? I mean, as good as what your presentation was. So can you join me? Join with me?